Good afternoon, everybody. President, members, farmers, guests. I feel like I'm at an RDS here. Not that this is a political event or anything. First of all, can I say that it's a privilege for me to be here to speak to what is one of the most dynamic and effective representative organisations across the European Union, bar none. And you are continuing to play a very effective role in lobbying for and finding solutions to the challenges that we face at the moment in a whole series of different areas. And over the last 10 or 11 months or so, I have developed, I hope, a good relationship with the IFA, with your leadership. They've pushed me hard on certain things when that was necessary. They've helped me find solutions to genuine problems when that was appropriate. And I hope we've built up a relationship that's based on respect and trust. We don't always agree, but most of the time we do. But I think all of the time we have the same objective in mind, and that is to build agriculture, to build a positive and exciting future for people who want to commit their working lives to farming and to food production. And I think that it's not an exaggeration to say that perhaps the most exciting sector to be in Ireland at the moment from an economic perspective is the agri-food sector. While the economy struggles to find new ways to grow, to create wealth and create jobs, particularly in terms of domestic markets, we have had 2 good years in a row from an agricultural point of view, and we've had very strong growth in terms of the value of food exports. And let's face it, the vast majority of what we all produce on farms needs to find a home and a buyer outside of this country. 85% of everything we produce. And so to start on a positive note, we launched last week with Board BIA the export figures. We exported last year, as you will know, just under €9 billion worth of food, which is €1 billion up on the previous year, which was €0.8 billion up on the year before that. So over a 2-year period, the value of food exports out of Ireland, food that predominantly you produce, has increased by €1.8 billion. And that is because of a number of factors. It's because of increasing commodity prices, primarily, which hopefully can be maintained. And it's because we are learning how to add value to our product more effectively. We're learning how to find new markets where we can command premium prices for what we produce, whether that's in dairy markets, whether it's in beef markets, whether it's pigs, poultry, sheep meat, lamb, whatever it is, or seafood for that matter. And if you consider, those of you who are dairy farmers here, that dairy exports last year grew in value terms by 17%, on top of a 17% growth in the previous year. We have had a value over a 2-year period of 34% to dairy exports, now up to €2.66 billion out of Ireland. In 2 years. And that is at a time when we are operating within the straitjacket of a milk quota regime, which is going to be there until 2015. If you start to think about those figures for a second, then you can start to imagine the opportunity and potential for expansion and growth and wealth creation that is there, and that's just in the dairy sector, particularly after 2015, when the new opportunities emerge as we move from a quota system into something new, something that we need to design that will work, that will ensure that we don't have an oversupply of milk that will lead to a price crash. We need to do that work over the next 3 years, preparing for what we know will be a 15 to 18% increase in milk production over the first 12 months after 2015, and probably a 50%, if not more, increase in dairy production in volume terms between 2015 and 2020. We are facing the most exciting period of change and opportunity, but also challenge, that Irish agriculture has faced, in my view, for 30 years. And it's not just about the dairy sector. We also have challenges in other sectors around how do we keep a suckler herd, beef herd intact? How do we make it possible for suckler farmers to make money from the market rather than having to rely on schemes for their entire income? In some cases, more than their entire income, even though beef prices are strong at the moment. So there is a challenge for us all to actually find ways of making more money from the marketplace, and my job, which is to maintain schemes in as supportive and as strong a way as we possibly can through difficult budgets, and we've just had the first one. But can I say, 6 months ago, I was having sleepless nights about how I would get through the budget in December. And through planning and looking at a whole series of options, through aggressive cutting within our own department and its agencies, the cost of running my department and its agencies will be €18 million less this year than it was last year. And that is because of a commitment which I am committed to indefinitely into the future, of trying to find savings internally within our department, within the way we do our business, before targeting schemes that affect you and your families. And we tried to do that. And I'm not looking for recognition for that. I'm just trying to give you the facts. I will commit to trying to streamline the department as best I can, working with Tom Moran and others, so that we provide the most efficient service we can to you, so that we can limit any reductions in expenditure that may need to be made as we have to make budgetary savings and so on. But in terms of the budget, we couldn't make the savings that were demanded of us by the Troika and by the Department of Finance in terms of internal savings alone. And those internal savings, by the way, aren't painless. We're reducing staff numbers, we're closing offices around the country, we're streamlining how schemes operate, how payments are made, we're reducing budgets to agencies that force them to make hard decisions in relation to staffing and budgeting and so on. And that is so we can try and protect really what we're here to do, which is to promote and support food production and agriculture. And not just food production, also rural Ireland, to keep people on the land when it's not possible for them to stay on the land because of the return that they get from the marketplace alone. And that is something that I'm reminded of by the IFA all of the time. So can I just focus on the budget for a second, and then I'll move on to the big issue of the day, which I know is CAP, and I'll talk about that in some detail. But in terms of the budget, yes, we had to make savings. I didn't want to have to cut REPS. All right? REPS is a great scheme. It's worked for farmers, it's worked for the environment. It was a scheme that a lot of farmers bought into. It made sense. But I had to find savings somewhere. And the reality is that there are many farmers in this room who are not in REPS any longer, who would like to get back into REPS, even under the current payment model, which is 10% less following the budget. So that is not something that we wanted to do, but it was the least worst option, if you like, in terms of where we would find savings. In terms of the disadvantaged area payment, I can see a number of faces in this room who lobbied me hard in terms of disadvantaged areas, and rightly so, because you're representing communities as well as farmers. And so I said that any savings that we would make in disadvantaged areas would not cut income support for farmers who are actively farming in disadvantaged areas. And so we didn't cut the rate. We didn't cut the eligible area that you can apply for a disadvantaged area payment on. Instead, we made changes to the eligibility criteria based predominantly in relation to stocking rate, so that people who have extremely low stocking rates, and there are some people who only put enough stock on the land in order to draw down a payment. And I have no problem paying those people when we have enough money to do it. But when we have to focus money on the people who need it most, well then I want to support active farmers. And so we increase stocking rate levels, and they're still very generous and very low. They're not, they're no more than a sheep per acre. In terms of, and in areas where you're farming in SACs or mature areas or in commonage areas where there's framework plans, if you're required to have low stocking rates, well then you're exempt from any of the cuts. You keep your payments anyway. So in other words, what I was trying to do was to keep money flowing to active farmers and not reduce your income at all, even though I've had to make significant savings. And to try and take money from people who aren't really active farmers, but who are landowners who put stock on the land in order to draw down schemes or funds. And if there are genuine people who are caught out by the changes and who for good reason couldn't have stocking rate levels last year, which is the reference year, at the levels that we've set, well then come and talk to us about it. We're going to put an appeals mechanism in place that will hear your case and will support you if it's a genuine case. And I mean that. But we're not going to support people who are simply landowners who are putting stock on land purely to draw down payments, and they may have only kept the stock for 3 months of the year in the past or whatever. So we worked with farming organisations, with farmers, to try and understand what would be a fair change to the eligibility, and that's how we're making savings. We're also making savings when people have their farm primarily in non-disadvantaged areas, but take some land in disadvantaged areas. They will have a pro rata reduction in their payment depending on what percentage of their overall land is in a disadvantaged area, because they're not disadvantaged farmers in the same way that people who have their whole holding in a disadvantaged area are, and so they don't need the same supports. Again, we're trying to be as fair as we can in terms of any cuts that we need to make. And the one thing I will say, and the one change that we will concede, following a conversation with John and Pat, is that your President made a very strong case to me around people whose primary holdings are in disadvantaged areas, but who want to take leased land or conacre or buy land in non-disadvantaged areas in order to expand their operations and their farm, but they don't want to be discouraged from doing that by that actually impacting on their disadvantaged area payment, on their actual home holding, if you like. So what we're saying now, let's just be clear. If your home farm and holding is in a disadvantaged area, even if you take land outside of a disadvantaged area on lease, that will not impact on your overall disadvantaged area payment. And I think that is